A street girl, scarred by pain, encounters a child on the brink of the end. What happens next changes the life of a powerful man and challenges everything the world believes to be possible. The rain was falling heavily on the streets of New York City that Monday morning, turning the asphalt into mirrors that reflected the lights of the few cars still circulating through the city. Skylar pulled her torn jacket closer to her body, feeling the cold dampness penetrate through the holes in the fabric. Her bare feet knew every stone, every pothole, every corner where she could find shelter in that urban labyrinth that had become her home since she was 7. Now at 12, she had developed instincts that many adults didn't possess. She knew when a look meant danger, when a siren was getting too close, when the silence of the streets hid invisible threats. But that morning, as she searched for aluminum cans around the public hospital in the central region, something different caught her attention. It was a small figure, huddled near the hospital's main entrance. Skylar approached cautiously, like a feline sniffing the air before exposing itself. What she saw made her stop abruptly. A girl no older than 5 lay fallen on the wet ground. Her skin was as pale as paper, her lips were purple with cold, and an irregular breathing made her small chest rise and fall with difficulty. For a moment, Skylar hesitated. The street had taught her that getting involved in other people's problems usually brought consequences. But something about that helpless child touched a part of her soul that she thought she had lost a long time ago. It was as if she were seeing herself 5 years earlier, the day her mother didn't come home. Without thinking twice, Skylar knelt beside the girl and gently wrapped her in her jacket, the only one she had. The girl mumbled something incomprehensible. Her half-open eyes didn't seem to focus on anything specific. Skylar felt the weight of that small body in her arms when she lifted her from the soaked ground. "It's okay, little one," Skylar whispered, though she wasn't sure that was true. "I'm going to take care of you." Carrying the unconscious girl, Skylar ran through the deserted streets until she reached an abandoned building she knew well. On the 3rd floor, there was an apartment where she used to take refuge on the toughest days. The place had no water or electricity, but the broken windows let in fresh air, and the ceiling still resisted the rain. With precise movements born of necessity, Skylar improvised a bed using cardboard and blankets she had collected over the months. She placed the girl delicately on this makeshift bed and sat beside her, watching her with a concern she couldn't explain. The girl was clearly sick. Her breathing was labored. Cold sweat beaded on her forehead despite the morning chill, and from time to time she murmured disconnected words that Skylar couldn't understand. It was as if she were fighting against something invisible, a battle happening inside her tiny body. Skylar had never cared for anyone but herself, but something instinctive guided her. She placed her hand on the girl's warm forehead, trying to feel if the fever was too high. The moment her skin touched the child's, something extraordinary happened. A strange sensation ran through Skylar's body, starting in her chest and spreading through her arms like a warm electric current. It was an energy she had never felt before, intense and comforting at the same time. Her eyes closed involuntarily, and for a few minutes she let herself be carried away by that indescribable feeling. When she opened her eyes again, the transformation was undeniable. The girl's breathing had normalized, her cheeks had regained a healthy color, and the cold sweat had completely disappeared. Even more surprising, her eyes were open and alert, focused on Skylar's face with a clarity that hadn't existed minutes before. "Who are you?" the girl asked in a small but firm voice. Skylar was speechless for a moment, not only because the girl had woken up, but because she herself couldn't explain what had just happened. "I'm Skylar," she finally said, her voice still trembling from the experience. "How are you feeling?" "Better," the girl replied, trying to sit up on the makeshift bed. "Much better. My name is Claire." She looked around, observing the precarious environment with curiosity instead of fear. "Where are we?" "In a safe place," Skylar said, still trying to process what had happened. "You were very sick back at the hospital. What happened to you?" Claire lowered her eyes, a sudden sadness clouding her face. "I ran away," she said in a low voice. "I hate that place. The doctors always do tests that hurt, and Daddy is never there. He's always working." Her words carried a maturity that didn't match her age. "But now I feel strange, like something inside me has changed." Skylar felt a knot in her stomach. She also felt different, as if something from inside her had transferred to Claire during those minutes of contact. It was a feeling of emptiness, as if a part of her vital energy had been drained. "Are you hungry?" Skylar asked, trying to change the subject while attempting to understand her own feelings. Claire nodded, and Skylar got up to fetch some crackers she had stored in an old can. As the girl ate with appetite, Skylar watched her intently. There was something almost miraculous in Claire's recovery, something that defied any logical explanation. "Skylar," Claire said suddenly, interrupting the older girl's thoughts, "thank you for saving me. I felt like you did something special for me." "I didn't do anything special," Skylar lied, though her own voice sounded uncertain. "I just took care of you." "No, you did," Claire insisted with the innocent conviction of a child. "I felt a good thing inside me when you touched me, a warm and comforting thing." She held Skylar's hand with her small hands. "How you have something special inside you, don't you?" Skylar gently withdrew her hand, disturbed by the girl's sharp perception. "It's getting late," she said, trying to change the conversation. "You should rest more." But Claire wasn't sleepy. Her eyes sparkled with a vivacity that contrasted dramatically with the state in which Skylar had found her hours earlier. She began to ask questions about life on the streets, about how Skylar had learned to survive, about where she got food and shelter. Skylar answered cautiously, but gradually found herself telling stories she had never shared with anyone. She talked about the first days after the loss of her mother, about the cold nights when she thought she wouldn't survive until dawn, about the small daily victories that kept her alive. Claire listened to everything with total attention, her large expressive eyes reflecting an understanding that seemed impossible for her age. When Skylar finished speaking, the silence that settled between them was not uncomfortable, but rather loaded with a mutual understanding. "I want to stay with you," Claire said suddenly, her voice determined. "I don't want to go back to the hospital. I don't want to go back to a house where Daddy is never there. I want to learn to live like you live." Skylar felt her heart race. The responsibility of caring for a 5-year-old on the streets seemed overwhelming, but at the same time, something inside her felt complete for the first time in years. Claire was not just another person in her life. She was someone who needed her, someone she had saved through a power she herself didn't understand. "The streets are dangerous, Claire," Skylar said carefully. "It's not a place for a girl like you." "What about you?" Claire retorted. "You're a girl too. If you can do it, I can do it too." Skylar saw determination in Claire's eyes, the same steely determination she herself had developed to survive. Perhaps it was destiny. Perhaps that chance meeting wasn't chance at all. Outside, the rain continued to fall, but inside that small makeshift shelter, 2 lives had crossed in a way that would change the destiny of both forever. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give it a like. Tell us what city you're watching us from. We're continuing. 3 weeks had passed since. Skylar found Claire that rainy morning, and the two had developed a routine that functioned like a dance, choreographed by necessity. Claire quickly learned the invisible rules of urban survival: how to ask for food without looking threatening, where to find clean public restrooms, which people to avoid, and especially, how to become invisible when necessary. The 5-year-old surprised Skylar every day with her capacity for adaptation. Contrary to what Skylar expected, Claire didn't cry for the comfortable life she had left behind. Instead, she seemed to find a freedom on the streets that she had never experienced in her previous life. Her eyes sparkled when she discovered small things: how to make a toy out of bottle caps, how to find lost coins between park benches, how to distinguish which restaurants were most generous with leftovers. That Thursday afternoon, they were sitting on the steps of the church in the Chinatown neighborhood, where Father John always greeted them with a warm smile, and when possible, a bowl of hot soup. Claire was playing with little pieces of colored paper she had found in the trash of a printing shop, while Skylar watched the movement of people on the street. "Skylar," Claire said without lifting her eyes from her play, "sometimes I feel like you're my big sister." "Is that strange?" Skylar smiled, feeling an emotion she rarely allowed herself to experience. It's not strange. Sometimes I feel the same way." She watched. "Claire, for a moment, don't you miss your old life? Your house, your things?" Claire stopped playing and looked directly at Skylar. "My house was big and beautiful, but it was always empty. Daddy left early and came back late, when I was already asleep. The servants were kind, but they weren't family. She went back to moving the papers. Here, with you, I don't feel alone. Before Skylar could answer, she noticed that Claire had suddenly turned pale. The girl brought her hand to her forehead, an expression of discomfort spreading across her small face. "Claire, are you okay?" Skylar asked, immediately alert. "Just a little dizzy," Claire murmured, but Skylar realized it was more than that. In the last 3 weeks, Claire had experienced these occasional episodes, moments when she became feverish, nauseous, and visibly debilitated. And in all those moments, Skylar felt an irresistible compulsion to help. Without hesitation, Skylar placed her hands on Claire's shoulders and closed her eyes, concentrating on that sensation she had discovered on the first day. The warm energy began to flow again, leaving her chest and heading towards her hands. She felt as if she were transferring part of her own life force to Claire, and although she didn't understand how it worked, the results were always the same. After a few minutes, Claire sighed with relief. Her color returned to normal, and she smiled at Skylar as if nothing had happened. But Skylar, in turn, felt slightly dizzy, as if she had run a long distance. "This is happening more often," Skylar observed, trying to hide her own exhaustion. "But you always make me feel better," Claire said with the simple confidence of a child. "It's like you have magic in your hands." Skylar didn't like it when Claire talked about that. As much as she couldn't deny what was happening, the idea of possessing some kind of supernatural power scared her. She was just a street kid trying to survive. How could she have abilities that defied logic? "It's not magic," Skylar said firmly. "It's just... care?" Just then, Father John appeared at the church door, his kind face illuminated by a smile upon seeing them. He was a man of about 60, with grey hair and eyes that reflected decades of experience, helping people in difficult situations. "Girls, it's good to see you here," he said, approaching. "How are you today?" "Well, Father," Skylar replied. "Claire was feeling a little sick, but it's past now." The priest watched Claire intently, and Skylar noticed something different in his gaze. There was a curiosity, almost as if he were trying to decipher something. "Can I speak with you inside?" he asked gently. "I prepared a special snack today." The girls followed him into the church, where a simple table had been set with bread, cheese, and warm milk. While they ate, Father John sat with them, his expression thoughtful. "Skylar," he said carefully, "there's something I've been observing over the last few weeks. Whenever you come here, Claire seems very healthy and full of energy. But you always look a little more tired." Skylar stopped chewing, feeling suddenly uncomfortable. "I'm fine, Father. Just a little tired from life on the street." "Last night," the priest continued, "a homeless man named Joe came here. He had a wound on his leg that hadn't healed for weeks, with signs of a serious infection. He was very afraid to seek a hospital." He paused significantly. "He told me that you touched his wound and that in a few minutes the inflammation subsided and he was able to walk normally again." Skylar felt her heart race. She remembered the episode, but she hoped no one else had noticed. "I just cleaned the wound and put a clean cloth on it," she lied. Father John watched her with kind but penetrating eyes. "Joe showed me his leg last night. The wound had healed almost completely. In a few hours." He leaned forward. "My daughter, in 40 years of ministry, I've seen many things that science cannot explain. I'm not here to judge or question. I'm here to help." Claire, who had been listening in silence, suddenly spoke. "Father, Skylar is special. She saved me when I was very sick, and whenever I feel bad, she puts her hands on me and I get better." "Claire!" Skylar reprimanded, but the girl continued. "It's true. She doesn't want to talk about it, but I know she has a gift. I feel a warm, good thing when she touches me." Father John nodded slowly. "Are you afraid, Skylar?" The question caught Skylar off guard. No one had ever asked about her feelings regarding what was happening to her. "I don't understand," she finally said. "I don't understand how it happens. I don't understand why it happens to me. And I'm afraid people will think I'm strange." "Oh, the gift of healing is not something to be afraid of, my daughter. Throughout history, there have been people chosen to alleviate the suffering of others. But," and his voice became more serious, "it's also important to understand that this kind of ability demands a lot from the one who possesses it." "What do you mean, Father?" Skylar asked. "Does You are transferring something of yourself to the people you help. Your vital energy, your strength. That's why you get tired. He held Skylar's hand gently. It's a sacrifice you make, even without realizing it. Skylar looked at Claire, who was listening with total attention. For the first time, she began to understand why she felt drained after each healing episode. It wasn't just a coincidence. There was a price to pay for every miracle she performed. But I can't stop, Skylar said, surprising herself with the conviction in her voice. When I see someone suffering, especially Claire, I can't just ignore it. And that's what makes you special, the priest said. It's not just the power you possess, but your generous heart that leads you to use it for the good of others. Just then they heard loud voices outside the church. The priest got up to check and returned with a worried expression. There are some people out there asking about two girls. A well-dressed woman and a man in a suit. They are showing photos to people on the street. Claire became visibly tense. It's because of me, she said in a low voice. Daddy must be looking for me. Skylar felt a pang of panic. She knew this moment would eventually come, but she wasn't prepared for the possibility of losing Claire. The girl had become much more than a companion. She was the family Skylar never thought she could have again. What are we going to do? Claire asked, her large eyes fixed on Skylar's face. Skylar looked through the church window and saw a tall man in a suit, talking animatedly with some people in the square. Even from a distance, she could see the tension in his movements, the urgency in his search. I don't know, Skylar admitted. But I know that whatever we decide, we'll decide it together. Across the city, on the 32nd floor of one of the most imposing buildings on Park Avenue, Robert Vieira couldn't concentrate on the reports scattered across his desk. 4 weeks ago, his daughter, Claire, had disappeared from the hospital, and since then his life had turned into a nightmare of fruitless searches and sleepless nights. Robert was a man accustomed to solving problems with efficiency and determination. At 42, he had built a business empire that encompassed construction companies, real estate, and various investments. His word was worth millions. His contracts moved the economy. His decisions affected hundreds of employees. But none of that mattered when it came to finding his only daughter. The office door opened, and Lucy Smith entered with a folder in her hands. She was a 35-year-old woman, a social worker specializing in children in vulnerable situations, whom Robert had hired to help with the search when traditional methods failed. Mr. Vieira, Lucy said, sitting in the chair across the desk, I have news about Claire. Robert immediately looked up, a mixture of hope and fear stamped on his face. What did you find out? In the last few days, I've been doing rounds in the central region of the city, specifically in places where homeless children usually take shelter, Lucy explained, opening the folder. Yesterday, I spoke with a woman who sells flowers in Union Square. She told me she saw two girls, an older one and a smaller one, who matched the descriptions of Claire and a possible companion. Robert leaned forward, every word of Lucy's being absorbed with total intensity. Go on. The florist said the smaller girl was clearly from a higher social class, because of her clothes and way of speaking, but that she was accompanied by a seemingly homeless girl, older, who seemed to be taking care of her like a big sister. Lucy paused. The most interesting thing is that, according to her, the smaller girl seems healthy and well cared for, despite the circumstances. Healthy, Robert repeated, a note of disbelief in his voice. Lucy, Claire has a serious medical condition. She needs daily medication, constant monitoring. How can she be healthy living on the street for 4 weeks? I was also intrigued by that, Lucy admitted. So I looked for more people in the area. A man who works as a parking attendant told me something interesting. He said he saw the older girl helping a homeless man who had an infected wound on his leg. According to him, after a few minutes of contact, the man was able to walk normally again. Robert frowned. What does that mean? I don't know for sure, but I decided to investigate further. I spoke with Father John from the church in Chinatown. He confirmed seeing the two girls several times and told me something that made me very curious. Lucy leaned forward. According to the priest, the older girl, who appears to be about 12 and is named Skylar, seems to have some kind of special healing ability. Healing ability? Robert repeated, his tone skeptical. Lucy, we're talking about my daughter's life. I don't have time for superstitions. I understand your skepticism, Mr. Vieira. I'm a rational person too. but the reports are too consistent to be ignored. Lucy took some photos out of the folder. Last night I managed to photograph the two girls from a distance, near the church. This is Claire. Robert took the photo with trembling hands. It was undeniably his daughter, but there was something different about her. In the months before the disappearance, Claire had become increasingly pale, more fragile, more apathetic. In the photo, however, her eyes shone with a vitality he hadn't seen in a long time. "She looks different," Robert murmured. "Exactly. And this is the girl who is taking care of her," Lucy said, showing another photo. Robert observed the image of Skylar with attention. She was a thin girl with dark, disheveled hair, clothes clearly worn out by life on the street. But her eyes caught attention. There was a determination there, a maturity that didn't match her apparent age. "What do we know about her?" "Very little. The priest told me she has been appearing at the church for a few years, always alone, always cautious. He tried several times to convince her to accept help to leave the streets, but she always refused." Lucy paused. "There are rumors that she lost her mother when she was little, but no one knows the details." Robert studied the photos again. A part of him felt immense gratitude that this unknown girl was taken care of Claire, but another part felt frustrated at not being able to fully understand the situation. Where are they now? That's the question. They move constantly, never staying in the same place for long. But I have a strategy. Lucy leaned back in her chair. Instead of trying to capture them, which would certainly make them run away, I suggest we make gradual contact. Gain their trust first. I don't have time for psychological games, Lucy. I want my daughter back. Mr. Vieira, with all due respect, an aggressive approach could result in Claire running even farther away. This girl, Skylar, has clearly gained your daughter's trust in a way that perhaps even you haven't managed recently. Lucy's words hit Robert like a sharp arrow. He knew that in the last few months he had distanced himself from Claire, immersed in work while she struggled with her health condition. How many times had she tried to talk to him, and he had responded distractedly, looking at the computer or answering the phone? What do you suggest? Let's observe them first. Understand the dynamic between them. Understand why Claire chose to stay. And especially, Lucy emphasized, let's try to understand exactly what is happening with Claire's health. If she really is well, we need to find out how. Just then, Robert's phone rang. It was Dr. Mark Johnson, the doctor who had been monitoring Claire since her condition had been diagnosed. "Dr. Johnson, any news?" Robert answered immediately. "Robert, I need to talk to you about Claire. I received the results of the last tests we did before she disappeared today. There is something very worrying that I need to tell you in person. Can you come to the hospital?" Robert looked at Lucy, who had noticed the tension in the conversation. "I'll be there in 30 minutes. After hanging up, he turned to Lucy. "Go look for them. Use all necessary resources, but find them. In the meantime, I'll find out what the doctor has to tell me." At the hospital, Dr. Johnson received Robert in his office with a grim expression. He was a 50-year-old man, a renowned specialist in pediatric oncology, who had cared for Claire since the beginning of her medical journey. "Robert, Claire's last tests showed a progression of the disease that was faster than we expected," the doctor said directly. "When she disappeared, we were at the point of needing to make very difficult decisions about treatment." "What kind of decisions?" "More aggressive treatments with severe side effects. And even so, there was no guarantee of success." Dr. Johnson paused heavily. "Robert, without the proper treatment, Claire shouldn't be surviving for so long. Much less with quality of life. But Lucy told me she seems healthy. That's exactly what worries me. If Claire is really well, it means something is happening that we don't understand. It could be a spontaneous remission, which is extremely rare, or..." He hesitated. "Or what?" "Or there are external factors that are influencing her condition in a way that conventional medicine cannot explain." Robert left the hospital with more questions than answers. As he drove back to the office, his phone rang. That was Lucy. "Mr. Vieira, I found them. They are at the church in Chinatown with Father John. But there's something important you need to know." "What?" They know we are looking. Someone alerted them. They are scared and ready to run away again." Robert closed his eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of all the decisions he had made and those he still needed to make. His daughter was there, just a few miles away, but at the same time she seemed farther than ever. "I'm coming there," he said, making a dangerous turn in New York City's intense traffic. "Don't let them run away." If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give it a like. Tell us what city you are watching us from. We're continuing. The church was immersed in a tense silence when Robert Vieira walked through its ancient wooden doors. His Italian leather shoes echoed on the stone floor, a sound that seemed amplified in the charged atmosphere of expectation. His eyes scanned the environment until he found three figures sitting on the front pews. Father John, a small girl with light hair, whom he immediately recognized as Claire, and an older, thin girl with suspicious eyes that watched him like a cornered animal. "Claire?" Robert said, his voice breaking slightly on the first syllable of the name. The girl turned slowly, and when her eyes met her father's, Robert felt as if he were seeing a ghost. Claire was completely different from the pale and fragile child he remembered from the last few months. Her eyes shone with life, her cheeks had color, and there was an energy in her movements that he hadn't seen in a long time. "Daddy," Claire said, but her voice didn't carry the relief Robert expected. Instead, there was caution, almost apprehension. Skylar instinctively placed herself between Claire and Robert, her muscles tensed as if she were ready to run or fight. "So you can't take her," she said with a determination that surprised everyone present. Robert looked at the girl who had taken care of his daughter for 4 weeks. Up close, he could see the marks of the difficult life on her face. Skin dried out by the sun and wind, clothes mended several times, the thinness that indicated irregular meals. But he could also see something else, an inner strength that seemed far beyond her 12 years. "I am her father," Robert said, trying to keep his voice calm. "You can't understand what it means for a father not to know where his daughter is. And you can't understand what it means for a child to have a father who is never present." Skylar retorted with brutal frankness. Skylar's words cut Robert deeper than any business criticism he had ever received, especially because they were true. Father John stood up, his serene presence bringing a little calm to the tension of the moment. "Perhaps it would be better if we talked calmly," he suggested gently. "We all want the best for Claire." Lucy Smith, who had entered silently behind Robert, approached carefully. "Skylar," she said in a soft voice, "I know you took very good care of Claire. That shows you have a generous heart." Skylar looked at Lucy with suspicion, but something in the social worker's tone made her relax slightly. "Claire was almost fainting when I found her. She didn't want to go back to the hospital. She didn't want to be alone again." "And you didn't leave her alone," Lucy said. "That was very brave of you." Claire, who had remained silent observing the interaction between the adults and Skylar, finally spoke. "Daddy, I was afraid to go back. At the hospital, the doctors did tests that hurt, and you never stayed with me. Here with Skylar, I feel safe." Robert knelt beside the pew where Claire was sitting, his eyes level with hers. "Claire, I know I haven't been the father you deserved in the last few months. I was so worried about work, so desperate trying to find ways to pay for your treatment, that I forgot to simply be with you. But now I don't need treatment anymore," Claire said with the innocent certainty of a child. "Skylar cured me." Robert looked from Claire to Skylar, confusion evident on his face. "What does she mean?" The Skylar was visibly uncomfortable. "I didn't cure anyone. I just took care of her like anyone would." "Skylar has a special gift," Claire said, ignoring her friend's discomfort. "When she touches me, I feel better. Every time I get sick, she puts her hands on me and the sickness goes away." Robert looked at Father John, seeking some kind of rational explanation. The priest nodded slowly. "I have been observing these girls for weeks," the priest said, "and I can attest that something extraordinary is happening here. Skylar has helped not only Claire but several people in the community. There is something about her that I cannot explain, but that I cannot deny." "This is impossible," Robert said, his rational mind rejecting what he was hearing. "Claire has a serious medical condition that requires specialized treatment. There is no miracle cure." "Then explain how she is like this," Skylar said, gesturing towards Claire. "When I found her, she could barely breathe. She was cold, pale, almost unconscious. Look at her now." Robert truly looked at Claire, forcing himself to see beyond his own expectations and fears. His daughter was undeniably healthy. More than healthy, she seemed vibrant, full of an energy he hadn't seen in her for over a year. Dr. Mark Johnson, who had arrived silently during the conversation, approached the group. Robert, I need to examine Claire, he said. If she really is well, I need to understand how this is possible. Claire hid behind Schuyler upon seeing the doctor. I don't want to have exams, she said in a small voice. We won't do anything you don't want, Dr. Johnson said gently. I just want to check how you are feeling. Schuyler looked at Claire and then at the doctor. She's afraid of doctors, she said. They always did things that hurt. I understand, Dr. Johnson said. Claire, if you allow me to just listen to your heart and check your temperature, I promise I won't do anything else without your permission. Claire looked at Schuyler, seeking approval. Schuyler nodded slowly. Dr. Johnson performed a basic examination while everyone watched in silence. After a few minutes, he stepped back with an expression of total perplexity. This is impossible, he murmured. Her vital signs are perfect. Better than perfect. It's as if... He stopped, unable to finish the sentence. As if what? Robert asked. As if the disease had never existed, the doctor finished. Robert, I've been monitoring Claire for 2 years. I know her condition better than anyone. What I'm seeing here defies everything I've learned in 25 years of medicine. A heavy silence settled in the group. Finally, Lucy broke the tension. Schuyler, she said carefully, would you like to tell us exactly how you help Claire? Schuyler hesitated for a long moment. I don't know how to explain it, she finally said. When I see someone suffering, I feel something inside my chest. It's like a warm energy that wants to come out. When I touch the person, that energy flows through my hands. And how do you feel afterward? Dr. Johnson asked, his medical curiosity overcoming his skepticism. Tired, Schuyler admitted. Like a part of me has been transferred to the other person. Dr. Johnson looked at Robert. There are documented cases in medical literature of unexplained cures. They are extremely rare, but they exist. What I've never seen is someone so young with this ability, much less someone who can use it consistently. What does that mean? Robert asked. It means that Schuyler may have truly saved your daughter's life, the doctor said simply. Robert looked at Schuyler with new eyes. This street girl, whom he had initially seen only as an obstacle to getting his daughter back, might have been the answer to his most desperate prayers. Schuyler, he said, his voice filled with emotion, I don't know how to thank you for what you did for Claire. I didn't do it for gratitude, Schuyler said. I did it because Claire needed help. But now you need help too, Robert said. You are just a child. You shouldn't be living on the streets, taking care of another child by yourself. I've survived well on my own for 5 years, Schuyler said with wounded pride. But you don't have to survive anymore, Robert said. You can live. You can have a home, food every day, education, everything a child your age should have. Schuyler looked at Claire, conflict evident in her eyes. And Claire. Claire too, Robert said quickly. Both of you? Together. Claire held Schuyler's hand. Please, Schuyler. Daddy is offering a home for both of us. Schuyler looked around the church, at the priest who had been kind to her, at Lucy, who spoke with a sweet voice, at Dr. Johnson, who looked at her with respect instead of fear, and finally at Robert, whose eyes reflected deep and sincere gratitude. I need to think, Schuyler finally said. I can't just abandon the people who depend on me on the streets. How about we do this, Father John suggested. Schuyler, you and Claire stay here at the church tonight, where I know you are safe. Tomorrow we can all talk again about the future. Schuyler nodded slowly. It was the first time in 5 years that someone had offered her time to make an important decision, instead of forcing her to react immediately to circumstances. The next morning brought a thick fog over New York City, as if the city itself were shrouded in mystery. Schuyler woke up early in the back of the church, where Father John had improvised 2 comfortable beds for her and Claire. For the first time in weeks she had slept soundly, without worrying about strange noises or the need to keep one eye open. Claire was still sleeping peacefully, a soft smile on her face when Schuyler quietly got up and walked to the window. Outside she could see the morning movement of the city, people going to work, vendors setting up their stalls, children running to school. It was a world from which she had disconnected at 7, and the idea of being part of it again scared her as much as it excited her. You're up early, Father John's gentle voice said behind her. Schuyler turned, meeting the cleric's kind gaze. I always wake up early. It's a street habit. Did you sleep well? Better than in a long time, Schuyler admitted. It's strange to sleep without worrying. The priest approached the window and looked out as well. Skylar, can I ask you a personal question? Cousin, I guess so. Do you remember your mother? The question hit Skylar like a punch to the stomach. She rarely allowed memories of her mother to surface, as they were always accompanied by a pain that seemed unbearable. I remember her singing to me before bed, Skylar said, her voice growing smaller. She had a beautiful voice, and I remember the smell of the perfume she wore, a sweet smell like flowers. Was she a good mother? The best, Skylar said, tears beginning to form in her eyes. She always said I was special, that I had a heart too big for my small body. She said that one day I would help many people. Oh, and you have been helping, the priest observed gently. But I lost her, Skylar said, the old pain returning to the surface, because of a stupid accident that could have been avoided. Just then they heard footsteps at the church entrance. Robert Vieira entered, accompanied by Lucy and an older man whom Skylar didn't recognize. Good morning, girls, Robert said, his tone carefully gentle. I hope you rested well. Claire ran to greet her father, and Skylar noticed a subtle change in Robert's behavior. He knelt to be at Claire's height, paying full attention to what she was saying about how she had slept. It was different from the tense interaction of the day before. Skylar, Robert said, approaching her, I'd like to introduce someone. This is Mr. Edward Jones, a private investigator who has been helping me look for Claire. The older man greeted Skylar respectfully. There was something in his eyes that made her feel uncomfortable, as if he knew something she didn't. Miss Skylar, Edward said, during my investigations to find Claire, I discovered some information about your past that I thought you would like to know. Skylar felt her stomach clench. What kind of information? Edward looked at Robert, as if asking for permission to continue. Robert nodded reluctantly. I found records about the accident that resulted in your mother's death 5 years ago, Edward said carefully. Her name was Maria Santos Skylar, wasn't it? Threater nodded, unable to speak. The accident involved a truck from a third-party company that provided construction services. The driver lost control of the vehicle due to brake problems that had not been adequately checked. I know that, Skylar said, confused about where the conversation was going. What you may not know, Edward continued, is that the third-party company was working on a project for Vieira Construction at the time. The silence that followed was deafening. Skylar looked from Edward to Robert, trying to process what she had just heard. Are you saying that? Her voice came out as a whisper. Robert's company was responsible for the accident that killed my mother. Robert took a step forward, his hands extended in a gesture of peace. Skylar, I didn't even know of your existence until yesterday. When Edward told me about the connection, I was as shocked as you are now. It wasn't directly Mr. Vieira's company, Edward quickly clarified, but there was a chain of responsibility. The third-party company had been hired by the construction company, and there was negligence in the maintenance of the vehicles. Skylar felt as if the ground were moving beneath her feet. The person who was offering her a new home, whose daughter she had saved, was indirectly connected to the tragedy that had destroyed her life. Did you know this yesterday? Skylar asked Robert, her voice cold. No, Robert said firmly. Edward told me this morning before we came here, and when I found out, my first reaction was to come and tell you immediately. Why? Skylar asked. Why tell me? It would be easier to hide. Robert knelt in front of Skylar, putting himself at her height. Because you saved my daughter. Because you deserve honesty. And because, his voice broke slightly, I know what it's like to lose someone we love and not be able to do anything to bring them back. Claire, who had been listening to the conversation without fully understanding, approached Skylar and held her hand. Skylar, are you sad? Skylar looked at Claire, seeing the genuine concern in the 5-year-old's eyes. Claire was not to blame for anything that had happened. Claire was just a child who had found in Skylar the older sister she had never had. I'm confused, Skylar admitted. Lucy approached gently. Skylar, I know this must be very difficult to process, but I would like you to know that after Edward discovered this connection, Mr. Vieira immediately ordered a complete investigation into the safety practices of all third-party companies he works with. And more than that, Robert added, I want to create a support fund for families who have been affected by similar accidents. I know this can't bring your mother back, but maybe it can prevent other families from going through what you went through. Skylar looked around the church, her eyes passing over every person present. Father John watched her with compassion, Lucy with hope, Edward with respect, Robert with a mixture of guilt and determination, and Claire with pure and simple love. "You want me to forgive you?" Skylar said, not as a question but as a statement. "No," Robert said, surprising everyone. "I don't expect your forgiveness. What I hope is that you allow me to try to compensate in some way for the pain that my indirect negligence caused in your life." "How?" "By letting me take care of you, as I wish someone had cared for you when you needed it. By letting me be the family you lost." Robert paused. "But not just out of obligation or guilt, because I genuinely want you in our lives." Claire let go of Skylar's hand and went to her father. "Daddy, Skylar is my family now. She took care of me when I was sick. I know my daughter, and for that I am eternally grateful to her." Skylar walked to the window again, observing the city outside. For 5 years she had learned to rely only on herself, not to trust adults, to always expect the worst from people. But in the last few weeks with Claire, she had rediscovered that it was possible to care for someone and be cared for in return. "If I accept," Skylar said slowly, "it won't be because I forgave you. It will be because Claire needs me and I need her." "I accept those conditions," Robert said immediately. "And I want to help other kids like me. I want your construction company to do something real for the children who are on the streets right now." "What do you have in mind?" Skylar turned to face him. "A safe place. Not just a common shelter, but a place where children can heal, learn, and discover that they have value. A place where people like me can use their gifts to help others." Robert smiled for the first time since he had entered the church. "That can be arranged." Dr. Mark Johnson, who had arrived silently during the conversation, approached the group. "There's something else we need to discuss," he said. "Skylar, your gift of healing is real, but it also has limits. You are physically exhausting yourself every time you use this ability." "I know," Skylar said. "I feel like a part of me goes away each time." "We need to find a balance," and the doctor said. "A way for you to help people without completely exhausting yourself. Perhaps by working with a medical team, using your ability strategically and carefully." "Would you study with me?" Skylar asked, curious despite everything. "If you allow me." "Not to turn you into an object of study, but to help you better understand and control your gift." Skylar looked at Claire, who had returned to her side. "What do you think, Claire? Should we try?" "I think Mom Maria always said you would help many people one day," Claire said with the simple wisdom of a child. "Maybe it's time to do it right," Skylar smiled for the first time that morning. Claire had just called her Mom Skylar, a title that carried more love and responsibility than any other name she could receive. 6 months later, Skylar was standing in front of a mirror in what was now her bedroom, looking at a version of herself that she barely recognized. Her hair had grown and gained shine, her skin no longer showed the signs of life on the streets, and she was wearing clean, comfortable clothes that Claire had insisted on choosing for her. But what had changed the most was not visible in the mirror. It was the peace in her eyes, the confidence in her movements, the certainty that she belonged somewhere. Outside the window, she could see the site where the construction of the Skylar Center was almost complete. It wasn't just a common shelter, but a complete complex with dormitories, classrooms, a library, an infirmary, and a special area that she had insisted on including, a garden where the children could plant and care for their own flowers. "Skylar, are you ready?" Claire shouted from downstairs. "Coming," Skylar replied, taking one last look in the mirror. Today was the official inauguration day of the center, but it also marked another important moment. Skylar had decided to tell her story publicly for the first time, not to become a celebrity, but to inspire other people to believe that real change was possible. Walking down the stairs of the house where she now lived with Robert and Claire, Skylar found a scene that still surprised her every day. Robert was in the kitchen preparing breakfast, something he had started doing after realizing that the most important moments in life happened during family meals. Claire was sitting at the table, finishing a drawing she had made of the center. "Good morning, family," Skylar said, a word that still sounded strange but comforting in her mouth. "Good morning, sister," Claire replied, running to hug her. In the last few months, Claire had stopped calling Skylar Mom Skylar and started calling her simply sister, which reflected the change in the family dynamic. Robert had reassumed his role as father, while Skylar had found her place as the big sister and protector. "Are you nervous?" Robert asked, pouring the coffee. "A little," Skylar admitted. "I've never spoken to so many people at once." "You'll do great," Claire said with total conviction. "You always know what to say to make people feel better." During breakfast, Lucy arrived with a folder full of documents. In the last few months, she had become not only the coordinator of the center, but a kind of older sister to Skylar, someone who understood both the bureaucratic and emotional difficulties of her new project. "We have 15 children confirmed for the first week," Lucy said, spreading the papers on the table. "Ages between 7 and 15, all coming from situations of social vulnerability." "And Dr. Johnson?" Skylar asked. "He will be there 3 times a week, not only to take care of your health during the treatments, but to teach the other children basic notions of first aid and health care." During the months of the center's construction, Skylar had learned to better control her gift of healing. Working with Dr. Johnson, she discovered that she could help people without completely exhausting herself, focusing her energy and working in a team with traditional medical professionals. She was no longer the lonely girl trying to heal the world by herself. Now she was part of a team dedicated to making a difference. "And did Father John confirm that he will come to give the blessing?" Robert asked. "Of course," Lucy smiled. "He said he wouldn't miss the inauguration of his bravest daughter's project for anything in the world." The priest had become a paternal figure for Skylar, someone who had helped her process not only the loss of her mother, but also the complex relationship with Robert. Through long conversations at the church, Skylar had learned that forgiving did not mean forgetting, but rather freeing herself from the weight of the past to build a better future. In the afternoon, when they arrived at the center, Skylar was impressed by the crowd that had gathered. There were City Hall representatives, journalists, other businessmen interested in similar projects, employees from the Roberts Construction Company, and most importantly for Skylar, some of the street children she knew from her years on the streets. Joe, the homeless man whose wound she had cured months ago, was there in clean clothes and a proud smile. Several of the children who attended Father John's church had come to see the new place that would be their temporary or permanent home. "I'm very proud of you," Robert whispered in Skylar's ear before she went up to the small makeshift stage. Skylar looked at the crowd, feeling a mixture of nervousness and determination. Claire was in the front row, smiling and making encouraging gestures. Father John was beside her, his hands clasped in silent prayer. Dr. Johnson watched with professional interest, while Lucy held a camera to record the moment. "My name is Skylar," she began, her voice initially trembling but gaining strength. "7 months ago, I was just another child living on the streets of New York City. I had no family, no home, no hope that my life could be different." She looked at Claire, who gave her an encouraging nod. "But I learned that sometimes people enter our lives exactly when we need them. Claire taught me that caring for someone can heal wounds we didn't even know we had. Robert showed me that admitting mistakes and trying to compensate for them is braver than pretending they didn't happen." Her voice became stronger, more confident. "This center is not about me. It's about all the children who are now where I was a few months ago. Children who need to know that they have value, that they deserve love, that they can have a different future from their past." Skylar paused, looking at the attentive faces in the crowd. "I also learned something important about my gift. For years I thought having the ability to heal people made me different, isolated me from others. But I discovered that we all have special gifts. Some heal with their hands, others heal with kind words, others heal simply by being present when someone needs it. The important thing is for us to use our gifts to help each other." Applause began to rise from the crowd, but Skylar raised her hand for silence. "I want to make a promise today. This center will always be a place where children can discover their own gifts, where they can heal from the wounds of the past and build hope for the future. It will be a place where they will learn that no matter where they came from, they have the power to choose who they want to become." The applause exploded from the crowd, but the most special moment for Skylar was seeing Claire run towards her for a hug. "You were perfect," Claire whispered. "We are perfect together," Skylar corrected, hugging the girl who had changed her life forever. 2 hours later, when the last visitors had left and the center was silent, Skylar walked alone through the corridors that would soon be filled with children's laughter and voices. In the garden, she knelt and planted the first flower seedling, a symbolic gesture to mark the beginning of a new phase. "Mom," she said in a low voice, speaking to the memory of the woman she had lost so many years ago, "I think I finally understood what you meant when you said I would help many people. It wasn't just about healing with my hands. It was about healing hearts, including my own." Just then, Claire appeared by her side, followed by Robert. Without words, the three knelt in the garden and began planting seedlings together, each one representing a new hope, a new chance, a new beginning. Skylar looked up at the darkening sky over New York City and smiled. She had started as a lost girl on the city streets, had found purpose caring for Claire, and was now ready to transform her pain into healing for others. She was no longer just a survivor. She had become a source of hope. Dear listeners, we hope that the journey of Skylar and Claire has touched your hearts in the same way it touched ours. This story reminds us that, even in the most difficult moments, love and compassion have the power to completely transform lives. Skylar discovered that her true gift was not just to heal physical wounds, but to heal wounds of the soul, including her own. To continue experiencing intense emotions like this, we have prepared a special playlist with equally touching stories that explore the strength of family love, overcoming difficulties, and the power of hope. Find this playlist by clicking here on the left side of the screen. If this story of Skylar and Claire moved you as much as it moved us to tell it, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and leave your like on the video. Every day we bring unique narratives that celebrate the complexity and beauty of human life, always with endings that renew our faith in the goodness of people. In the comments, tell us, what moment in the story touched you the most? Do you know anyone like Skylar, who transforms difficulties into opportunities to help others? Your personal stories always inspire our next narratives. Don't miss our upcoming content, where we will continue exploring stories of overcoming family and hope. Until next time, and always remember, we all have special gifts, we just have to discover how to use them for good.